Islam, are you a little bit surprised that the fans seem to not like Ian so much? Are you a little bit surprised that the fans are so against Ian this Saturday?
No, I don't surprise. I know. No, nobody like Garry. Myself also. He don't know because people confuse which country represent, Brazil or Ireland. People don't know. People know who they have to support. Thank you for all your support, guys.
A person is misguided in their thoughts, and when they're misguided in their thoughts, they set themselves up for a very, very bad night or a bad result. I'm not saying Ian Garry cannot beat Islam Makhachev. What I'm saying is you got to take that as it comes. You can't try to say, I want to beat the number one pound fighter in the world in a certain round because I don't want it to be a fluke. If you win, it does not matter how you win. It does not matter how.
Predictions for UFC this weekend?
I'm gonna go Makhachev by boring takedowns and holding, hugging, a whole bunch of laying on the ground.
And we'll see what happens. Listen, if Islam may retire,
I can feel him.
He may retire. He's done a lot. He's competed in 2 different weight classes and won world championships in 2 different weight classes. If he beats Ian, if he submits Ian and says, I've had enough, I'm going to do what Khabib did and I'm going to coach now, I could see that. And then I could see Morales protest for the fucking undisputed title.
Yeah. Islam Makhachev taking on Ian Garry. Who've you both got in that fight?
I think Makhachev got this one easy. I think Ian Garry is a phenomenal fighter, but I don't think he's on the level of grappling of Makhachev, and I think Makhachev will get it done.
We're talking about Islam Makhachev. He's getting a little bit older now, but he's still in his prime. He's definitely still in his prime, and yeah, I think it's a tough fight. I do think it's a tough fight for both guys, but I can't think at any point that Islam is going to lose.
You've said this before, though, on many predictions, so we'll have to see.
Mate, but I don't get my predictions
but,
right.
But the only loss that Ian Garry has had is against Shavkat, which is quite interesting in that aspect because remembering that fight, Shavkat basically won on decision, but he took the first few rounds, he got onto the front foot, and Ian Garry didn't know what to do with that. Is that a case of, that's my only worry, is that obviously if Islam starts to do that, and obviously it's going to go to 5 rounds, surely from a decision perspective, Islam is always going to be favoured.
Right, I think when you're fighting a guy who's got such a heavy grappling style, you're automatically like defensive of that, which means like you're going to start going backwards. I would like to see Ian Garry get on the front foot with him. Not always on the front foot, but, you know, intermittently going on the front foot with him, pushing him backwards sometimes, landing some heavy strikes, keeping it long and stuff like that, rather than expecting the takedown and the tie-up constantly, which, mate, easier said than done.
And obviously, Islam's only loss was a bit of a freak one.
Yeah.
Could we see something like that potentially?
Yeah, it's MMA. It's MMA, isn't it? You can always see someone's got to win, someone's got to lose. There's only 2 guys there. These are the 2 best guys in welterweight division in the whole sport. So I wouldn't be surprised either way. If Ian knocks him out, I wouldn't be that surprised. But I just think Islam Makhachev's very, very, very good. But so is Ian Garry, so we don't know. It's interesting.
Tell me, how do you think this fight between Islam Makhachev and Ian Garry is going to go?
In Brazil, you say like the world, like makes the things happen, you know? So I really want to fight Ian Garry, so I think Ian Garry going to win.
You're manifesting it?
Yeah.
How does he win if he does?
Decision. Yeah.
All right, thank you,
5
Carlos.
rounds.
Islam's pound for pound #1. He's moving up. He beat JDM. He's the 170-pound champ. I don't know. I think Ian's going to do a really, really good job at frustrating. I don't know if he's going to be able to frustrate Islam. He's so mentally tough. So he's been through these 25-minute fights. But I do think there's going to be a point where he's frustrating Islam. He's popping with the jab, and he's moving. He's circling. He's not engaging. He's hitting him with it. The crowd's booing. They're staying up till 5 a.m. to watch him. And he's punching and moving. But he's doing what he has to do. That's the thing. If he doesn't do that, he might, he loses percentages to win the fight. So I do think it's going to be a little bit of a punch move. Don't engage too much. I think he's going to wrestle really well. I think he's going to not get his back pushed up against the fence. I think he's going to circle, find the center. shut down a couple takedowns, and people are sleeping on Islam's striking. Islam striking is clean, especially when he fought Dustin Poirier. But that was southpaw. On southpaw, he was slipped 2-3-2. It was looking super, super sharp. He head kicked Volkanovski. Volkanovski's 5'6". Ian Garry's 6'3". That's I don't think we're gonna see any Islam head kicks to Ian Garry. With that all said, he is vegan, so I'm wondering. I don't know. Part of me thinks that Islam could just grab a hold of him and snap him in half like a fucking zucchini. But I don't know. Final prediction: I think Ian Garry's gonna win a decision. I don't think it's gonna be the most exciting fight ever. I think there's gonna be some good back and forths, but I do think Ian Garry's gonna get the job done.
Prediction for the Makhachev-Garry fight. Let's go, Garry. You know it. He has the tools. He's been doing great work in SBG. He's long. He's definitely going to stay safe. He's definitely going to be in there. Makhachev has pockets where there's a lot of stalling. He still has things to prove in that welterweight division. He does look like he's at the grown up into it a bit more. It's a cracking contest. Of course I'm going with Ian Garry. And I really believe he can do it. For sure he can do it. How do I see it? Right high kick across the crown of the head. And a victory for the Irish Brazilian. Let's go, Ian. Rooting for you, bro. Great scrap, yeah?
I don't think it's going to be as competitive as everybody else thinks. A 7.940. What are the odds that even if he loses, Ian Garry fucks Islam's leg up with the kicks like he did on Shavkat? I don't know. That is probably the only place where I see the competitive kind of... This fight could be competitive if there's a way Ian Garry, he is 6'3", could keep this fight at range. But if he can't, I think Islam's a better wrestler, better grappler. Wade, how are your fans hella liberal, even though you mainly have a UFC audience that tend not to be liberal? Dude, my audience is not necessarily a UFC audience. My audience is a YouTuber audience. So between both of my channels, my comment sections are libbed the fuck up, dude. Libbed the fuck up. It's crazy. Loud minority, maybe. But, yeah. The only thing I can see is Ian, someone said it, kicking the legs, keeping Islam at bay, not letting him, not letting Islam take over. Not letting Islam overrun him and overwhelm him. Not letting Islam set up a new cabinet.
With UFC 330 almost here, the prediction conversation around Islam Makhachev and Ian Machado Garry reached its most interesting point yet. The closer this fight gets, the harder it becomes for experienced fighters, coaches, and analysts to ignore just how complicated this matchup really is. On paper, you have a former champion moving into a massive new challenge, facing a long, technical striker who believes his size, range, and ability to fight at distance can completely change the equation. And that is exactly why the latest predictions are so fascinating. This is no longer just a question of who has the bigger name or who has achieved more in the sport. The real question is whether Garry can force Makhachev to fight a style he does not normally see for 5 rounds, or whether Makhachev can take away the space Garry needs before the fight ever becomes comfortable for him. Analysts within the combat sports community have pointed out that this matchup is difficult to predict because both men have such different ways of controlling a fight. Makhachev wants to make his opponent react to him. Garry wants to make his opponent chase him, reach for him, and eventually make a mistake. That contrast could determine everything. For Makhachev, the obvious path begins with his grappling. His ability to close distance, connect his hands, change levels, and turn small positional advantages into extended control is one of the biggest problems Garry has to solve. But simply saying Makhachev will wrestle misses the real tactical issue. The question is how he gets there. Garry is not a stationary target. He uses distance as part of his defense, and his striking becomes much more effective when he has room to read his opponent. If Makhachev charges forward recklessly, he could give Garry exactly the kind of long-range exchanges he wants. But if Makhachev can pressure without becoming predictable, suddenly the fight changes. Every step toward the fence reduces Garry's options. Every forced exchange gives Makhachev another opportunity to connect to the body, attack a leg, threaten a takedown, or make Garry think about wrestling instead of striking. And that mental pressure matters, because against a fighter like Makhachev, Defending the takedown is only the first problem. The opponent also has to defend what comes immediately after it. A failed takedown attempt can still create a clinch. A clinch can create a trip. A trip can create back control. And once Makhachev establishes a dominant position, the fight can become less about athleticism and more about survival and decision-making. That is where Garry's composure will be tested. Several respected voices have noted that Garry's greatest opportunity may not be trying to out-wrestle Makhachev. It may be making the wrestling difficult enough that Makhachev has to spend energy getting inside. Garry has the frame and range to make the first phase of every exchange uncomfortable. His jab, kicks, straight punches, movement, and ability to fight from long range can create problems if he maintains discipline. But there is a trap here. Being the longer fighter does not automatically mean you control distance. Distance has to be maintained. If Garry backs up in straight lines, allows Makhachev to walk him toward the fence, or becomes too focused on avoiding the takedown, he could slowly surrender the very advantage that makes his striking so dangerous. That is why the opening rounds may tell us more than people expect. If Garry can keep the fight in the center, make Makhachev reset repeatedly, and punish every unsuccessful entry, the confidence on his side could grow quickly. Makhachev would then have to decide whether to increase his pressure or become more patient, and patience could be just as important for him. The general sentiment among professionals who have studied this closely is that Makhachev cannot afford to treat Garry like a normal opponent. The physical dimensions, striking style, and 5-round possibilities make this a different tactical puzzle. But the same thing applies to Garry. He cannot afford to assume that one clean shot or one successful defensive sequence means the fight has been solved. Makhachev's experience in championship-level fights gives him something extremely valuable: the ability to operate while the fight is changing. A fighter can look brilliant in the first round and completely different by the third. The ability to recognize those changes and adjust is often what separates a strong performance from a great one. And that may become one of the biggest questions at UFC 330. What happens if Garry wins the first round? Does Makhachev panic? Probably not. What happens if Makhachev gets several takedowns early? Does Garry mentally collapse? That is the question his supporters will be watching, because the psychological battle is almost as important as the physical one. Garry needs to believe that every minute spent on the feet is his minute. Makhachev needs to make him question that belief. If Garry starts wondering when the next takedown is coming, his striking can become less natural, his combinations may shorten, his movement may become more defensive, and suddenly Makhachev does not need to land a takedown every time. He only needs the threat of one to influence Garry's decisions. On the other side, Makhachev has his own danger to manage. If he becomes too aggressive trying to force the fight into his preferred range, he could walk into counters. Garry does not need dozens of clean opportunities. At long range, one well-timed combination can change the momentum of a round. That creates a fascinating tactical battle. Makhachev wants to turn the fight into a sequence of controlled positions. Garry wants to turn it into a sequence of open spaces. Makhachev wants Garry thinking about his hands and hips. Garry wants Makhachev thinking about his reach and timing. Whoever forces the other fighter to abandon his preferred rhythm could have the biggest advantage. And then there is cardio. 5 rounds changes everything. A fighter can look completely different after 15 minutes of wrestling, clinching, defending takedowns, and constantly getting back to his feet. Garry's challenge is not simply surviving those moments. He has to make Makhachev pay enough for them that the champion's pressure becomes less effective later. For Makhachev, the objective is almost the opposite. He needs to make Garry work early, especially when Garry is defending rather than attacking. If those defensive sequences accumulate, the striking advantage Garry has at the start of the fight could become less significant as the rounds continue. This is why the latest predictions are divided. Those who favor Garry are likely looking at the range, the physical dimensions, the striking variety, and the possibility that he can keep Makhachev at the end of his weapons for long stretches. Those leaning toward Makhachev see a completely different picture. They see a fighter with the grappling tools to force exchanges on his terms, the experience to remain composed, and multiple ways to turn a single successful entry into several minutes of control. Neither argument is unreasonable, and that is what makes this fight so compelling. There is also something bigger at stake for both men. For Makhachev, this is about more than adding another victory. A dominant performance against a fighter with Garry's style would strengthen the argument that his game can translate against completely different physical and tactical challenges. For Garry, this is an opportunity to prove that his long-range striking and defensive awareness can hold up against one of the most demanding styles in the sport. Beating Makhachev would not simply add a major name to his record, it would change how the entire division views him. That is why the final predictions matter. They are not just guesses about who wins, they reveal what experienced observers believe will matter most when the cage closes. Will the fight be decided by Garry's ability to maintain distance? Will Makhachev's pressure eventually force the Irish fighter into the fence? Can Garry punish enough entries to discourage the wrestling? Can Makhachev consistently close the distance without taking major damage? And perhaps the biggest question of all, what happens when both fighters realize their original game plan is not working? Because eventually, one of them may have to make an adjustment. That is where championship-level fights are often decided. My prediction comes down to the fighter who can impose his preferred conditions for the longest period of time. Garry has a very real path to victory if he keeps the fight at range, refuses to get trapped against the fence, and makes Makhachev pay whenever he enters carelessly. But Makhachev's path is equally clear. If he can pressure intelligently, force Garry backward, connect his wrestling to his clinch work, and make the fight physically exhausting, the advantage could shift dramatically as the rounds progress. So with only hours separating us from UFC 330, the biggest mistake would be assuming this fight is simple. It isn't. This is a battle between range and pressure, striking freedom and positional control, movement and pursuit. And every prediction being made right now ultimately comes back to one question: who gets to dictate where this fight takes place? If Garry keeps it in open space, we could see a very different fight from the one Makhachev wants. If Makhachev repeatedly gets Garry to the fence and onto the mat, the entire complexion could change. And that is why these last-minute predictions are so important. The closer we get to fight night, the less room there is for theory, and the more we are about to see which fighter's strengths actually survive contact with the other man's game. So now I want to hear your prediction. After considering the range, wrestling, cardio, pressure, and 5-round experience, who do you believe wins at UFC 330? Islam Makhachev or Ian Machado Garry? And more importantly, do you see this fight being decided primarily on the feet, or do you believe Makhachev's grappling eventually takes over? Let me know your prediction and your method of victory in the comments, and subscribe for more combat sports news, fight analysis, reactions, and last-minute predictions as UFC 330 gets closer.